So everyone is talking about HTMX and I didn't have a clue about what it is. So I went in and researched on it to see what is all this fuss about. Why is it so good? Why so many people are loving it? And among those people, a lot of backend developers. So I actually wanted to see what it's all about, and I can say that I'm really pleased with what I found. Um, this new library for JavaScript will allow you as a backend developer to work with the frontend almost without JavaScript. HTMX is a library that allows you to use modern browser features without using JavaScript. So it is somehow an extension on HTML that allows you to do AJAX and a lot of other features like animations and so on without having to resort to JavaScript. And this is really good for us backend developers who are being forced into using JavaScript. I mean, I had to learn React, Angular, and all sorts of things and complex frameworks only because I wanted to do a front end. And so why HTMX? I think I said a little bit about this, but I am a Java developer and I know Java inside out, but I am not an expert in JavaScript. So I always had to go and learn a ton of frameworks and new complex tools, everything to run a front end. And I was getting tired of that. So when I learned about HTMX and its philosophy, I thought it was a great idea. For example, we can see here many of the web-based applications that we do don't really require to be a single page application. Like React, Angular, they all based on this concept of single page application. And these applications are basically applications that are very responsive, that want to keep the user's attention and so on. But for example, in enterprise applications, we don't really need to do all that every time. I know it's better to have some single page functionality, but it's not really that required. So in this case, what HTMX allows you to do is keep some of that single page application behavior without forcing you to go full in depth into JavaScript, Angular, React, Next.js, and all that. So this is a very good feature of HTMX. You're not forced into JavaScript. You don't have to serialize your data into JSON. And we almost think that's the default now, but we actually never had to do that before. When we were working with multi-page applications instead of single page, what we had was a backend and the front end was returned directly from the backend, so the HTML was returned directly. Of course, that HTML had a lot less functionality that we have today. That was how it worked. So when we did that, for example, with JSP in Java and so on, or ASP.NET or wherever, what we used to do there was basically having our objects in the data model transformed directly into views in the backend. And even the JavaScript world is turning into this now. For example, Next.js and other frameworks, they work with server-side rendering. This is the creation of HTML on the server, because they realized that creating the HTML in the front end is really costly. Drawing all the HTML in a front end with the client, it's really costly. So they want to do the rendering in the backend. So I already said that we don't really need to use these complex and ever-changing JavaScript frameworks for our frontends if we are working with simple enterprise applications, for example. So I don't think HTMX is the replacement for React or for Angular. I think it's a very interesting tool that will help you in the right scenario. If you really need to do something that has to keep the user's attention really on, and you're working with very elaborate animations and so on, then you probably need to stick to React and Angular. But if you're working with enterprise applications, for example, this is only an example, but it could be other things as well. And you don't really need to do all these fancy animations and all that. You're probably good sticking with your backend technology and HTMX and hypermedia, which is the main concept behind HTMX, is to put hypermedia back in the stage, in the center of the stage. In the old days, what we used to do is generate this HTML, the hypermedia, in the server and show it to the user directly without any processing on the client. As functionality on the browser started to grow and we started to have more and more JavaScript functions and capabilities, then we started to grow the processing on the client side. And this has been all right, but it has started to grow so much that it has performance concerns. It has the concerns of maintaining all that client code. So because of that, what even the JavaScript frameworks are doing is processing on the server the HTML. For example, Next.js is very famous because of the server-side rendering, which is producing the HTML in the server. And we can do this as well with Java. We've always done it. And with Spring Boot, for example, you can use Thymeleaf or FreeMarker or whatever templating you want to use, and you can render the HTML there. The only problem with that was that if you wanted to introduce some nice animations or AJAX and all that, you had to use JavaScript. There was no way around it. But now with HTMX, you can use AJAX and animations and so on by just using HTML and no JavaScript. So this is going to be our tutorial. We're going to do a Spring Boot application, and this Spring Boot application will be a small social media feed, so something like X or X Twitter. So we're going to do a small social media feed in which we're going to be loading more posts with a button saying load more, and this load more is going to trigger an AJAX call, and we're going to do all this with HTMX, and we're not going to use JavaScript for this. And the other thing is we're going to be using Spring Boot, Thymeleaf, which is a templating mechanism to generate HTML, and then HTMX for the AJAX. The other thing that I'm going to use is Bootstrap so that we can add some styling, but I'm not an expert in the front end. I'm not an expert in Thymeleaf. This is just a demonstration for you guys. So keep that in mind. Cool. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new project. If you do it with IntelliJ, you can use the Spring Initializer, and this is really useful. So we're going to name it something like posts Spring HTMX, and we're going to be using Maven programming with Mati, and we are going to be using Java 20, and that's it. And now we have to check the dependencies for Spring. So we're going to use Spring Web for our controllers and all that, and we are going to be using Thymeleaf. Okay, only that, and we can click on create. Okay, so we have our application, and if we go to the POM, you will notice the dependencies. We have the parent POM being the Spring Framework parent POM, and we have also the starter for Thymeleaf, the starter for web, for Spring Web, and this is all good. So this has been really easy for now. Now let's just go ahead and create a basic model class. So I'm going to create a Java class. I'm going to say model, and it's going to be a record, and I'm just calling it status. Okay, so the status will represent a post. The status will have an ID. It will have a string user handle. It will have a string user display name and string content, right? So this is our status. Then what we can do is go ahead and create a controller. So I'm going to create a controller called StatusController. Okay, and we're going to use the annotation controller so that we tell Spring Boot that this is a controller. And I'm going to create a get mapping, so a method that will receive a get request, and this get request is going to have the feed page, so public string and get feed, and this receives a model, a Spring Framework model, and in the model we need to return the initial state. So let's return some of the statuses. For that, I'm going to generate a list of random statuses, which I already generated, and I'm going to copy it right here. But I have a list of 40 statuses. See? So I'm importing this class. I have all these random statuses I created. And with these random statuses, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add them into the model as statuses, and I'm going to do a sublist. So I'll return the first page, and the first page is going to be from 0 to 10, right? Because I want the first 9 elements. And then I'll return feed, and this is going to point to my view. So in Spring MVC, if you return this, what it will do is it will look for a page that has this name. So how does this work with Spring Boot and Thymeleaf? You go in the resource folder and you have to create a view. So I'm going to create a view called feed.html, right? And that's it. So now I have a view, and if I click on here, it takes me directly to the view. Right, so what else? I'm going to create a basic HTML document. It will have a head and a body. And we close the HTML tag. And that's it. So if you see here, I have added this in the HTML. This is telling Thymeleaf that I'm going to be using it to generate the HTML in this page. So I'm going to have a title here, let's say my feed, and I'm going to start adding the libraries. So the first library I'm going to add is HTMX. So to put HTMX, you can use the CDN link that they have in their page. This is just a POC, so I'm going to use the CDN link. So basically, this will download the script into the client's machine, and it will use it to generate the HTMX functionality. Then I'm also going to be using Bootstrap to generate my styling, which is not a big deal. I'm not going to put a lot of effort in it. And I'm going to create a div here, class, container, and in here I'm going to, okay, let's put an h1 for the feed title, just feed. All right, for the post, I'm going to have a template that I already created, and I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to explain what it does. So this is the main post div. So each post will have its own div, and it's going to go one below the other. And if you notice, this div has a tag here saying each, and this is a Thymeleaf each. So this is like a for each. So in this, I'm going to declare an object status from the list statuses. If you remember, I returned a list called statuses, right? So if we click on here, IntelliJ will take you to here, and this is really useful. Then I'm using the styling from Bootstrap. So this is some of the Bootstrap classes. In here I have the body of the card, and in the card, for each card I'm going to be adding the different user content. For example, I have here the status display name. This is going to show the name of the user, and below that it's going to show the user handle. And then below that I'm going to have the actual text, and then 3 buttons for like, comment, delete that are not going to work for now. And for now, we're going to do it like this. We're not introducing HTMX yet. So now what it will do is it will generate a page with 9 posts. So if I run this application, all right, so the application is already running. So if I go to the browser and I do localhost 8080 feed, I should be able to see my feed. So as I told you, it's not very pretty, but it works. And we have, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, it works. So what should we do now? We should introduce a new button right there in the bottom of this list to load more tweets. So I'm going to add that button. To do that, I'm going to have to add a card here. So I'm going to say just div, and just to keep everything on the same styling, I'm just putting card, and I'm going to copy one of these one of these buttons here, and I'm just saying load more. Let's remove this. So load more, and I'm going to be using this button as the trigger, right? So this will have to call a new method that will load more statuses. So how does HTMX work? What I need to do is call the backend and request for more HTML, and it will replace that HTML which we have here with a new one. So how can we do this? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to on this button we'll have to add a new tag, and this new tag is called AJAX get. So this new tag is telling the button you will be able to call to do an AJAX call, and this AJAX call will call a new method called statuses, and I'm going to request the page 2. All right, and then I have to say, okay, what do you want me to replace? And I would like to replace this whole card with more statuses, and I'm going to have to add this button again. So in the statuses page I'm going to return also this button. So I'm going to say here an ID, and let's just call it replace me. Okay, so now I'm going to tell this button that it has to replace me. So you see this one, HX target, it's telling HTMX that anything returned by this has to replace this whole thing. And finally, HX swap, and I'm going to say outer HTML. So this is the way in which it's going to replace it. Finally, I can have inside the button also something called an indicator that is going to be like a spinner or something like that. You don't have to put this, and maybe we won't even be able to see it because it's going to be so fast. Indicator, and in here says spinner GIF, right? So we are good to go. Now we need to implement this. We don't have this method, so I'm going to go to the status controller, and I'm going to be implementing this method here. Is going to be a get as well, and we called it statuses. So here let's go and put like this, and public string statuses, let's just call it get to keep it consistent. And this is going to receive a request param. This request param is called page, and it's basically an integer page, right? And what else? So I'm going to have to create so this is going to return a new page called statuses as well. So this new page is a view that I need to create in my templates. So I'm going to go here and create an HTML file, statuses. Okay, and we're going to be removing most of this because we won't be needing it. So back in our status controller now we have a page, and what do we have to do here? All right, so in our model we're going to add attribute Oh, sorry, I forgot to add the model here. So model, add attribute, statuses, and I'm going to have new status. So what I need here is a sublist. So what list should we put here? So we have the page number. So to calculate which elements of the list based on the page number, we could do something like this, I guess. So we can have a to number, which would be the page multiplied by the page size, which in our case is 10. So I'm going to put this into a constant, and let's just call it page length. And I'm going to have a from, which is basically the to value minus the page length. So basically 2 minus page length. So with that said, I think this should work. So if I do sublist here and I just say 0 and page length, and that should work. And the other thing that I'm going to add here is I'm going to add the link to the next page. So let's just say add attribute, and I'm going to be calling this let's just call it link, and this link is going to be statuses and page, and in here I'm going to say page +1, right? Oh, sorry, I have to put this in parentheses because otherwise it's going to be added to the string and it's going to be added as a string. Okay, so now we have it properly working, and we have to create our statuses page. So how do we do this? I'm going to go to feed quickly, and I'm going to copy this part right here. And okay, so let's go to statuses. And the other thing we have to make sure is that we're using Thymeleaf. So I'm going to copy the Thymeleaf thing here. Right. So now I can use Thymeleaf, and you see, again, I have the statuses here, and I have, okay, so everything as it was, but in here, I need to replace this link with the next page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Thymeleaf, and this is going to be basically like that. And let's remove this and just say link, which is the object that we added in our model, right? So if we go here back, so now what you see here happening is HTMX is going to be receiving the result of this transformation, and it's going to replace this part with that result. And we have another button in the bottom so that we can keep loading. So if I run this application now, let's see. Okay, application is running, and let's say here I load everything again, and let's take a look at our code. So if I inspect this, you see I have this replace me, and it's pointing to the 2, and I can also have the network here so I can see what's going on. So you see now it loaded more data. You see? And this is the response. It responded with new statuses, and it also points to page 3. So if I load now, if I see the code here, now it points to page 3 and I have all these statuses. How cool is that? That's just amazing. And the greatest part here is that we were able to use AJAX. We were able to use asynchronous requests without having to use JavaScript. We just added some tags on some attributes on the HTML tags, and that's it. So how cool is that? For me, a Java developer, not being forced into using JavaScript for basic things like AJAX is such a relief. So I can keep loading, and you see more cards. It's just amazing. So this is just a little taste of what HTMX can do, but you can imagine the range of possibilities that you have with this technology. I really encourage you to take a look at it. I am going to take a look at it because it's been a long time since I don't do HTML on the Java side. I've been using React mostly for anything JavaScript related. So being able to use Thymeleaf and do these kind of transformations with it is just so cool. All right, so what did you think about it? I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's so great to be able to do such a simple thing like loading new stuff on the page, like adding just a small attribute on the tags without having to do a whole lot of setup on the JavaScript and have a million frameworks just to help me build the JavaScript. I mean, this is such a relief for me. So I am fascinated with HTMX. I'm going to be looking more into it. I want to learn more about it. I want to start using it again with Java. And let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Do you think this is going to replace JavaScript forever? I don't think so. I think this is just a tool, and it's a great tool, and you can use it for the different scenarios in which it's appropriate. But you have to know that in some scenarios you'll have to use React, some scenarios you'll have to use Angular, and in some scenarios you can use HTMX. The good thing about this is knowing these tools, knowing that they are there, and knowing what they are good for, so that you can use it whenever it's appropriate. So if you like the video, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, like, and share. And if a lot of people subscribe, then it will be easier for me to do more and more content. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.